I can't believe it's been over 10 years since this game was released. I shouldn't have kept putting it off because little did I know how much fun I'd be having if I just played it a wee bit sooner. I guess I'm making this video to try and make people aware or even convince them to give it a try, because I know that you won't regret it. Not enough people know about how great this game is, and they need to, and so that's what this video's for. By clicking on the video you already know what game we'll be discussing, Bayonetta. It's a hack and slash game that shows off what the genre can really do. It was developed by Platinum Games and directed by Hideki Kamiya, who's known for his work on the first Devil May Cry game. Throughout the video you'll likely see some features that are quite similar between the two franchises, but you'll also see what makes them their own unique games. If by the end of this video you're not simping hard for any of the cast, then I have not done my job properly. I should point out that my summary of the story is not exactly super detailed or conventional, so just bear with me on that, okay? Anyway, let's get the video started. Before I dive into the story of the game, I'd like to just take a wee second and comment on how well I think the game is presented as a whole. I can honestly say I don't think I've seen anything like it before. I don't know if this was because of budget constraints or not, but it works really damn well, so I'm glad they decided to go with it. I guess I should begin with the story. This will be a spoiler warning. Even though this description won't exactly be great, I will be covering the events that happen throughout the game. So if you don't want it spoiled, skip ahead. You have been warned. So we start with this girl called Cereza, who we later find out is actually Bayonetta when she's older. She's born, which is bad news for the world because her parents came from two different clans, the Umbran Witches, her mother, and the Lumen Sages, her father, a representation of light and dark, more or less. They had some stupid rule meaning they can't be together because their child will be of impure blood. A time skip happens, she grows up an outcast. She's chucked into a coffin for about 500 years. She's awakened, basically goes on a quest to get answers as to what's happening, who she is, what's her purpose. She's got a very hazy memory after a long ass sleep, but who can blame her? I barely remember who I am after a nap. Throughout the entirety of her journey, she's being hunted by Heaven, I guess, Heaven's forces, because the Lumen Sages decided that witch hunts should happen, and she's like the last, but she's not really, Umbran Witch, so that's who you're fighting the entire game. Heaven. Love it. As we follow our journey, she bumps into Sasuke Uchiha, who has taken a break from his departure of the Leaf Village and Orochimaru to look for the reason why Bayonetta killed his dad. This is later debunked because she didn't actually kill his dad, it was the army of Heaven. Bleh. We find out a little bit later why that is, and that's because his dad, who was a journalist just like he is just now, decided that he would try and investigate the head Lumen Sage, Balder, who's also Bayonetta's dad. Creepy bam. Hate his character, hate everything about him. Horrible guy. Yep. Along the way we meet a young girl who, her whole plot is essentially an escort mission, but it's cool because she's adorable and we love her to bits. It's also very easy to see from first glance that it's actually Bayonetta. Ah, see, the sneaky developers thought they got one over on me. Well, okay, maybe they did the first time. The game kinda does what it wants, and we're just supposed to follow along, so. Her relationship with Luke is pretty fun. Oh, that's Sasuke, by the way. Another dino babe appears as the story progresses called Jean. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Forgive me for any pronunciations that suck in this dialogue. She's seen as an antagonist, but she's actually not. She's just been brainwashed by the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, until she's not. She ends up saving the day, and we absolutely adore her for it. Plus she's just full of swag. Eventually we reach Balder, who's been anticipating Bayonetta's arrival for a while now, because she herself is one of the two keys necessary for Balder's plans to work. He's the other one, obviously. Jubileus is basically just this big fuck off statue that's capable of either resetting the world, restoring the balance of the world because of the imbalance created by Balder himself and Bayonetta's mum, or just killing everyone. So you've got a wee handful there to pick from. Basically, let's just try and not wake up the statue. After a really cool boss fight, and one of the best quotes in the game. Sadly, it's not over, because, wouldn't you believe, Balder is still alive, haha. He then captures Bayonetta, puts her inside the left eye of the statue, awakening it, which we didn't want happening. Just before she's trapped though, Jean comes along, like the absolute legend that she is, after having ridden a motorcycle, into space, like off debris and shit. Yanks her out the eye. Just, she's such an MVP, honestly. Sadly, it doesn't turn out well for her though, because, you know, that took a lot of power to drag her out the eye. So Jean floats away into space. She's dead. Except, no, she's not. She's actually okay. We fight the big statue, kick its ass, send it into the sun, where it fries away, and then we are left hanging about in space until we hit Earth, where Bayonetta dies. We're at her funeral. It's really sad. Except, no, it's actually, she's fine. Of course she's fine. It's Bayonetta. Her, Jean, Luca, Rode, and the whole gang live happily ever after, continuing to kick the ass of heaven and the wee angel guys, I guess. And that's Bayonetta. Good game, 10 out of 10, would buy again. Wow, you made it to the end of that terrible delivery, but I mean, it wasn't mostly inaccurate. I covered a lot of what happened. Like I said before I started discussing the story, I replayed the game and everything made more sense the third time. So, yeah, if you're still here and wanting to stick around, I guess we'll move on to the characters now. One of the highlights and standouts of the game is definitely the cast, and I'm sure others who've played will also agree with me on that. If it's not Bayonetta either cracking me up or making me wish I wasn't such a damn simp, it's everyone else providing either decent laughs or pretty enjoyable moments. And with that, I'll start off by talking about Bayonetta herself. I can't even lie, I was simping over her pretty hard the entire game. She was fantastic to watch in cutscenes and during combat. She also had some pretty great one-liners that were sort of reminiscent of like 80s action stars, which was funny. Having a main character that's very quotable just means they're more memorable in my opinion, so she won't have to worry about being forgotten. It's nice to play as someone as in charge and in control of as many of the mental situations throughout the game as she was. When she wasn't kicking ass, it was a nice change of pace to see her toy with Luca and care for him and Cereza. Jean's another incredible character. I like how she served as an antagonist even though that's not what she wanted to be. She was brainwashed by that ball-bag Balder, so she couldn't help it. Gotta say, her snarky and witty retorts to Bayonetta were interesting because they put her on the same level as her, and everything else up until this point just appeared to be small and not threatening at all. Overall, she served her purpose pretty well. I will not forgive the iframes during her boss fights though. Luca was a lovable sidekick and proved to be very capable when the situation required it. I saw a lot of myself in Luca. I wonder why that was. His interactions with Bayonetta and Cereza, or Cerezita, were probably my favourite parts of the game, to be honest. You'd have to try hard not to like him. He also 100% fancies Bayonetta even before he finds out that she didn't actually kill his dad. Who can blame him though? He's very fun, and every cutscene he was in was a joy to watch. Shout out to the cast, by the way, they did a fantastic job with the roles they were given. Cereza was also very cute and likeable, especially with Mum and Luca as well. A particularly fond moment I remember was when she was trying to mimic the actions of Bayonetta and Luca. She would fold her arms and try and pose like Bayonetta, and then when she was swinging from the building as it blew up, she was doing like the little whip thing that Luca does with his grappling hook. Those were fun. I never really found her annoying at any point, even during the escort parts of the game, because they didn't overstay their welcome. They were done very quickly and just didn't take up a lot of time at all. You really grow to care for her. I found any of the moments with Rodin, no matter how small they were, had me laughing or smiling. His references had me going, ha! Especially, what are you buying? You know, the guy from Resident Evil 4, who doesn't sound like that. The coffin at the end when it breaks over his head as well, like, just lol man, that's so funny. He just doesn't even feel it. He's also the guy that kits you out with all the weapons and owns a bar, so yeah, there's a ton to like about Rodin. Truly a great guy. Enzo served as some proper comedy, and again, he was quite fun to watch. I am triggered though from his, oh what a day, because I've heard that more than I'd like to admit. That's just because I suck at the game though. You get the impression that he's a bit of a sleazeball, but I'm cool with that, as long as he keeps me laughing. Balder was trash, fuck him and his creepy ass. He was an okay villain. If you want to fully enjoy the game's cast though, you'll need to play it. Like, I just can't do it justice by talking about it. Oh yeah, so Luca is the guy I referred to earlier as Sasuke and Spider-Man because it's the same voice actor who does all three. Yuri Lowenthal, he's amazing. I recently found out that he also does the voiceovers for the Genshin Impact character trailers, which is pretty cool, so you'll hear him there. Anyway, I'll talk a bit now about the graphics of the game. Not that there's a ton to talk about here, or that graphics make a game or anything, but sometimes they help with immersing the player in whatever world the developers design. And for a game that was released over 10 years ago, on 7th generation hardware, in other words the PS3 and Xbox 360, it holds up really well. It was only recently released on PC a couple years ago, I think, which is how I played it, thanks Steam sales. £3 as well, I got it for £3, you should probably check it out, on PC if you can. I also played it with a PS4 controller, which is probably something to note for later. Haha. I think the character models and animations are pretty decent for the time, and mostly look on point. The dance sequences are actually very well done, and I was quite shocked to see how good they looked. I'm no animator, but I'm sure it's probably hard to make characters dance, so props to the team. The levels too look pretty sick, big environments are always nice. There's a couple hiccups and refinement here or there, but it's not nearly enough to make like a bad impression or anything. The scale of some of the levels too, frankly, blew my mind. And not to spoil too much, even though I discussed it a little bit earlier, the last level is just something awesome. I personally think the graphics hold up today, so you can have a look and let me know what you think. Next I'll talk about gameplay, which is possibly the biggest draw to one of these games. Time to talk about arguably the most important aspect of any game, and the part that you've likely been waiting for, the gameplay. I mean, if a game doesn't feel good to play, I think there's possibly an issue there, right? We don't have to worry about that here, as I can say without a shadow of a doubt that Bayonetta offers some of the most solid gameplay that I've had the pleasure of experiencing in a long time. It's a hack and slash, like I said earlier, so the majority of the gameplay is focused on creating a big string of combos and amassing a huge amount of damage to a group of enemies, making sure to take as little damage as possible, also doing it in style. The developers knew exactly how to make the game entertaining, and I didn't feel bored or think at any point that I had no options for the entire playthrough. Okay, here's a quick story though about my playthrough. So as you make your way through the game, you can collect pieces of LPs, and if you gather all the pieces to a single LP and go back to Rodin, he will craft you a new weapon. LP being vinyl record, for those that might not know. It's simple enough, right? Well, as I collected the LPs and returned to Rodin, I couldn't ever find out how to use the new weapons he gave me. I ended up completing the entire game with just the basic fists. I still loved it, by the way. It was only after accidentally pressing share on the PS4 controller that I was using did I load up a new screen. The weapon and item crafting screen. I was so gutted and couldn't get over how much of an idiot I was, and a similar thing happened to me when I played the game Nioh, which is like a Dark Souls game. I didn't scroll all the way down when I was viewing the skill tree menu, so I missed out on like 10 extra skills. So essentially I played through the entire game with less than half of the weapons that you're given. And if that can't attest to how much fun the game is, then I don't know what to tell you. Now we'll cover more of what the actual game consists of. So there's 3 things you're going to want to focus on when you play this game. That is witch time, your mana meter, and your health bar. The last one of course being self-explanatory. As you fight and defeat enemies throughout the game, you'll begin filling up the mana meter, which is used for Wicked Weave attacks or torture attacks. I'll explain those a little bit later. If you dodge an attack with precise timing from most enemies, you will execute Witch Time, which essentially slows down the entire game for a small duration of time, giving you enough time to think about what your next move's going to be or how you want to execute a certain combo. You'll be using it in every single fight, so you kinda have to get used to it. By filling up a lot of the meter, you're then able to execute a torture attack. They tend to kill the smaller enemies in one go, but the bigger enemies they just take a massive amount off. They also have some really funny animations depending on who you perform it on, so that's always something to look forward to when you encounter a new enemy. A lot of the torture attacks are actually based off of real life torture devices, I'm sure, so, you know, kinky. So I said earlier about giving the LPs that you find throughout the game to Rodin. That's where he'll piece them together in a funny way and give you a new weapon. He also has a shop where you can buy techniques and other items that will help you throughout the game. The techniques are probably something you're going to want to invest in early on to give you a bigger variation of moves throughout the game. There was one technique that I used way more than the others though, and that was the breakdance gun show one. It's pretty fun to watch. The techniques also enhance Bayonetta's character because it's definitely something that she would do, like the moves that you're giving her, a technique you could see her using. I also really enjoy the one where she ends up like doing the splits or something and she's looking at the camera and it winks and takes a wee photo. That's nice. That's nice. Some of the enemies drop weapons that you're able to use until they break because they've got a limited durability. And again, I feel like they represent the style of the game really well. My favourite one being the axe that you're able to use like a stripper pole. Blink. The guns are also something you'll probably notice straight away because it's hard to miss 4 guns strapped onto a lady, right? They're also one of the first weapons you have access to. The guns don't do a lot of damage, but I feel like they're used instead to like increase your combo, like the duration of the combo, to get in close and give you time to like execute some awesome string of moves. That's not to say they can't be used to kill, because you can definitely kill enemies with them. I'm positive the guns in this game serve the same purpose as they do in Devil May Cry. You also unlock shotguns later on, and they're pretty sick. Basically the same thing though, just more damage. Then we have the whip. The whip is a weapon that can be used to either bring enemies towards you or to latch onto them and propel yourself towards them. It can be used to make some pretty cool combos, although I did struggle with it. It also looks like a penis, and there is no denying that. It's fact. And going with the themes and style of the game, I'm sure that was on purpose. So, good job, Platinum Games. The sword is the strongest melee weapon and can be used to rack up insane damage. The sweep move with the summon, or punch kick punch I guess, is probably my favourite one to use. It's also the weapon I used the most in my playthrough. Then we have the Druga claws, which are a pair of massive claws, and I'm certain they're taken from 2 enemies that you face later on in the game, Grace and Glory, and I hate those enemies. They're a lot of fun to use, as you can harness like either electricity or fire, depending on what mode you have activated. They're also the key to getting platinums on bosses, by the way. All I'm gonna say is, ring ring bitch, because I'm swimming in a milli halos. Yeah boy. The RPG. Things go boom. Then we have the animal transformations, which are pretty cool. Throughout the course of the game, Bayonetta learns to use her Umbran powers more and more. She eventually gets the ability to turn into a panther, a hawk, or a swarm of bats. The last one you have to buy is a technique, unfortunately. I'm sure those are the animals, by the way. Correct me if I'm wrong. Each serve different uses, such as the panther being used for like speed and making your way around the verse pretty fast. The hawk being used to like stay up high, and it's got like a ranged attack that's pretty fun to use. And then you've got the bats, which if you miss a dodge and get hit, but then you press the dodge button like a second later, not even a second, immediately after getting hit, it negates all damage and activates witch time. So it's a super handy ability to have. Then we have the camera. So I've heard a lot of people complain about the camera. For me, I didn't have many issues on my first and second playthrough, but I did notice on the third playthrough that there was a mission, I'll just show it here to give you an example, that the camera was insane. Like, it would go everywhere. I couldn't follow my character. I couldn't see what was happening. But other than that, like, I didn't really have any issues with it. So, yeah, not got much to say on that. You guys will be sure to let me know how wrong I am, though, and how many times the camera screwed you over in the comments, I'm sure. I feel like I've covered most of the things that you should know about the game, so I'm going to talk now about the difficulty. Almost choked there recording that last wee bit. That's why I sound really weird. I've played through the game twice now, the first time on normal of course, and the second on hard, which is unlocked after completing one full playthrough. I'm aware that there is a harder difficulty, and I think it's called Infinite Climax, lol. My plan is to do a playthrough again on that. Hopefully I do it on a stream, we'll have to wait and see. I got mostly gold or platinum on normal difficulty. On hard I saw quite a few stone statue ranks, which is the lowest you can get though, and that was triggering, because I don't think I'm bad at the game, but there'd be a few times I'd slip up here and there and, you know, get a death, which definitely affects the end rank. So basically, anyone that plays on hard and can get platinums, or one better and can play on Infinite Climax and can get all platinums, or even golds, silvers, props to you. You're way better than I am. And it's definitely an achievement to be proud of. I will say though, for first time players, if you decide to play it on easy or normal, you should have a relatively good time playing it. It's not overwhelmingly hard at any points, meaning you should do well to get big combos and just have a lot of fun, which of course is why we play games in the first place. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about difficulty, so I'll talk a bit now about the enemies of the game. Let's go! The game had a sizable roster of enemies to take on, ranging from general combo fodder that you'd find in any hack and slash game, to the hair-tearing BAMs. I won't be talking about them all though, because that would take just too long, and when you do eventually decide to play the game, you'll want a couple of enemies to be surprises, right? Yeah. Because the game has this theme of light and dark, the enemies were designed with this in mind, and the result is really good. We have some dudes rocking halos, or even a set of wings. It's a nice change to the more conventional demon enemies. I always looked forward to finding out what the next one was going to look like. The only two throughout the entire game that gave me much of an issue were Grace and Glory. I cannot describe just how annoying these two enemies are to fight. Like, I can't. My resets would speak for me if I could show you. But when you do finally learn how to beat them, it's not as bad. The enchants were pretty cool, because they are essentially pin moves from Dark Souls, but if you could yeet them back into that game, that would be nice. Sometimes Witch Time didn't work on certain enemies, and that would trigger me, especially with Grace and Glory, just as a wee extra. So that was not fun. Not fun at all. I feel though that overall the team did a very good job at making a tough but fair game. There was a decent amount of challenge, and it felt rewarding when you did eventually overcome difficulty. It's time to talk about the big bad of the game, the boss battles. They are often big, funny, flashy, and sometimes a wee bit sexy, if you catch my drift. The scale of each boss fight gets progressively bigger and crazier with each new one introduced, making every fight either as good as the one before it or better. At certain points in the game you will fight your Umbran Witch counterpart, Jean, who essentially has the same moves and fighting style as you, similar to that of Shadow Link in Ocarina of Time, which was cool, although not always fun. Although I did actually enjoy the fights, I had a few issues with them. The main one being the invincibility frames and breaking out of combos. Like, I understand it's got to be dramatic and big, but if I'm wailing on you, you can't just break out of that. No, I won't accept it. I can't even remember how many times I had to replay the same fight just to get the platinum. Too many. This is optional, of course, but like, damn, it was not fun. There would come a point during the fight where you and Jean would mash your Wicked Weave fists and feet together, and it was pretty fun, not gonna lie. The quick time events during the battles were fine. I wasn't annoyed by them or found them to be overly intrusive. They actually offered some funny and cool moments too. Personal favourite being the arms that you summon when you fight the enemy golem. That is, just listen to this. Yeah. It's safe to say you won't be disappointed with each boss fight in this game, that's for sure. They are pretty memorable as well. Okay, on to unique levels. As you play through the game, it tends to stick to the hack and slash aspect. However, as you progress further, you're treated to not one, but two totally unique levels that play differently to the rest of the game. These are Route 666 and Isla del Sol. The reason why these levels are unique are because you don't take control of Bayonetta necessarily, you take control of either a motorcycle or a rocket. Yeah, a rocket. It's not really that hard to believe though, is it? Considering the scale of the rest of the game. Route 666 is basically just a long ass level of Mario Kart with, some shooting involved. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing it the first 2 or 3 times. I could see why trying to platinum this one though would be quite tiresome, but overall I had a great experience with it. Well, let's talk about Isla del Sol now, shall we? It took me a while to learn how to actually play the level, and that's because the first time I played through it, I basically held in dodge the entire time, and I regret it massively because, just take a look at this for example. Yeah, that's what it was like for the entire game for me, because I didn't really know what I was doing. But these levels are a good change of pace from the standard gameplay. They come out of nowhere, and like I say, they're a lot of fun. At least the first couple of times. It's a good way to add some variety to the game, and I can say I'm happy they were included. Try them out yourselves and let me know what you think. I did forget to mention, but Jean also gets a short motorbike section, and it's pretty fun. Okay, on to the music now. During development, I believe the team knew exactly how they wanted the game to sound, and they absolutely delivered, giving us a very memorable soundtrack. With a total of around 150 tracks composed by a team of over 9 people, that is some collection and some effort. It complements the story and combat really well and gives life to old songs to fit the style of the game. The piece of music in particular that I am referring to is Fly Me to the Moon, which is a classic by Frank Sinatra. It serves as the main theme of the game and is so catchy. It's even featured as part of the game's plot, very briefly.
Let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like.
Mommy!
Was I just singing?
Mommy!
Another standout track is Jean's boss fight. It just gets you so hyped to fight her. All around, the tracks help to stylise the game and help set the tone from being fast and energetic to a bit slow or sad at some points. So pretty much if you want a list of fun and catchy songs, then you're set. The game won't disappoint. I can't wait to see what the sequel's got in store. The music is another reason as to why Bayonetta is just one of the best games I've ever played. And hopefully you see that too. This is just my own reasoning as to why people should play the game. If you listen, awesome. If you don't, that's also cool. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. I'm sorry about the overall pacing of it. I know some parts may have seemed fast and others a bit slow, but I'm still getting used to editing together and using the software, so. The reason why I even wanted to make this video was because I believe that the game is massively underrated. I don't see anyone really talk about it unless you look for it, and if more people know about how good it is, then maybe they'll get as an enjoyable experience as I and the wee cult that follows the game has had. That's all I really have to say about the game. I'm sure there's a few things I've maybe missed or not covered, but I think I got all the main points. I'll just have to cover them in Bayonetta 2 if I decide to do that video. Lastly, I'd just like to ask if you guys could maybe take a moment to either like the video, comment, or do me a big favour and subscribe.